This is Jim Engster. Thank you for joining us for Talk Louisiana, originating from the Investar Tower in Baton Rouge. And your number is 877-217-5757. Emails to talk@talklouisiana.org. Our first segment, we have our landlord who originates this program from the Louisiana Radio Network. And John D'Angelo is the guy who's the founder of Investar Bank, which owns the building, the former Clerk of Court building on Coursey Boulevard, and it is Investar Tower now. And John has quite a success story. He's a New Orleans guy and graduate of LSU, champion weightlifter when he was in college, and he still pumps the iron. But he's been president and CEO of Investar since 2006, and he knows much about the banking industry. And in Wall Street, it's been a topsy-turvy world in which things go up and down based on what the president says over the last few months. But on the whole, bank results show solid economy. That's the headline from the Wall Street Journal in yesterday's edition. Profits at J.P. Morgan, Wells Fargo, Citi, top views despite the global trade threats. What about tariffs and trade? Is this going to rock the boat, John D'Angelo?
Not for us here locally. We did a lot of work on that with our loan portfolio just to make sure that that we're not missing anything that could potentially be a problem for us. And so we don't have anything that's related to that. So we don't anticipate that as being a problem.
And the president is at odds with the head of the Fed, and it's a guy he appointed. He forgot that yesterday. He blamed it on Joe Biden. But anyway, Jerome Powell was brought in on February 2nd, 2018 by Donald Trump, reappointed by Biden. But he and the Fed head don't agree on interest rates, and the president believes that this is causing issues with the growth in the economy and not good for investors. How do interest rates affect your world?
So pretty dramatically. I mean, I would tell you that when the Fed started raising interest rates approximately 2 years ago, it really squeezed our margins a bit. We are what's called liability sensitive, meaning we have a lot of fixed rate loans in our loan portfolio. And as a result, we couldn't reprice the deposits or loans as quickly as we had to reprice the deposits because everybody wanted a higher deposit rate. But we made changes at the bank in 2023, and those changes have really come together in the first quarter where our margin expanded by 22 basis points, which was pretty much unheard of with a lot of banks. And we're going to announce our earnings on this Monday coming, so I can't talk about that yet, but we're very happy with what we're seeing.
All right. Well, I recall in the late 80s and early 90s, the head of the banking commission in Louisiana was Fred Dent. He was the guy who was closing banks, and there were a lot closing. We had the S&L crisis, and it was a brutal hemorrhaging in Louisiana, and that we don't have as much of that anymore. Why is the environment much better now than it was then?
I think the regulatory environment has really changed a lot of things. So, one, more capital is required to start a bank today and to remain a bank today. So, capital was a big thing. The regulators have become much more sophisticated, Jim. I mean, they now can scope out a bank and identify where the potential issues are in advance, and they do a pretty good job of it. So, for instance, we're a $2.7 billion bank, and our regulators, which we're a national bank, so the OCC is our primary regulator, and they came in this past year and through their scoping efforts were very focused on what they wanted to look at, what was important to them, and I think it just makes for a better environment for the banks, and I think that for that reason, and others, I guess, in the Capitol, you're just not seeing what you once saw.
We're hearing the voice of John D'Angelo, who founded Investar right after Katrina, but you had a long career in the industry. You were president and director of a lending corporation with operations in 46 states. So this was not something that was a fly-by-night operation, but still, I would imagine almost 20 years ago, you had to basically put everything you had in this endeavor. That's a risk.
It was a huge risk, to be honest with you. I decided that I was going to start the bank. My wife and I decided that. I went home. We had 2 babies, pregnant for our third, and I told my wife I was going to quit my job. And she said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, we're going to start a bank. And she said, well, how do you start a bank? And I said, I have no idea, but we're going to figure that out, and we're going to start a bank. And so Kathy asked, well, what does that mean to us? And I said, well, we're going to live in our savings for the next 12 months. And at the end of 12 months, we're going to take everything we have left and plow into this new company that we're going to start. And so the next day I went in and quit my job, and we were off to the races.
And you were in your early 40s then,
That's
uh,
correct.
and that's a good age, but still, when you've got a family, as you did, uh, there are a lot of people who wouldn't take that chance.
Well, I will not mention his name, but I had a neighbor at the time who we all know very, very well. And when I had mentioned what I was going to do, he said, "John, I'm just not sure. You have these children. There's a big risk. It's a startup," and was discouraged me completely about doing it. But I stayed the course, and he still to this day, when we see each other in public, we laugh about it and have a smile. But yeah, it was risky, and I guess for me, we started in a trailer, Jim. I mean, we were right across the street from the Baton Rouge Clinic in a trailer, and back then our idea of expanding was we moved from a double wide to a triple wide, and but when I think back on those times, they were some of the best times I think we had in the history of the bank. I mean, we did everything. We swept the
Hmm.
floors, we put the trash out, we everything and anything we were doing, but we had a goal, we had a vision, and we were going someplace with
Hmm.
it. So this journey has just been so much fun.
And when you hear John's voice, you can kind of detect and discern that he's from New Orleans, but you were not a silver spoon guy, and that probably is one of the reasons why you were willing to take this chance and not live an opulent life, which basically you were working for other people for several years before you quote made it big.
Well, yeah. My father passed away when I was a freshman in college. He had leukemia. He passed away at 45 years old. And he was an attorney, had just gotten out the Air Force, and had gone back to law school. And so he was just getting started in his career when he passed away. And so my mother, very strong woman who has since passed away, but very strong woman. It was myself and a brother and sister, and she managed us through, that process of
Hmm.
getting through school and starting life, and just a wonderful person. But I think back on this. We've worked really hard with our children, by the way, to sort of although we've had some opportunities, but we try to let them have to work for everything they have. We don't just give it to them; they work for it.
What do you remember most about your youth in New Orleans?
Oh, there's a lot of things I remember. Some I remember. I'm gonna make you laugh. Some of, but Swagman's. We used to go when we were
Making
younger.
groceries.
That's right, making groceries. We'd go and she'd plop us up. They had like this little, if you could picture it, it was a cafeteria style place with a little bar on the Airline Highway in New Orleans, and she'd plop us up there. We'd get toast, and she'd go do all the shopping. And so I remember that. I remember Mackenzie's. We
Bakery.
used to
Yeah.
love. They had the brownies, and every once in a while they have the special with the brownies. We used to love to go get the
On
brownies.
Elysian Fields?
Yes, and
Yeah.
so and then we'd go downtown from time to time. The morning call, and just so many icons. At that time when I think back on it, that were
And
great.
high school?
High school, so I went to Archbishop Rummel High School, and probably some of the best 4 years of my life. I just absolutely loved high school. I was in the band. By the way, I was a drum major in the band my senior year. I lifted weights a lot. That's when I really started to lift
Yeah.
weights and loved to do that. So I was sort of an aberration because here's this band guy and he's built as big as the football players. Because I worked out so
Right.
much. So
Yeah.
I loved high school.
And you were a few years, just a few though, behind me at LSU, but you were with a guy who was contemporary with me, who was, if he hadn't blown out his knee, he probably would have been one of the great NFL players, George Atia. He was a wrestler.
Mhm.
He was a football player of renown from Allentown, Pennsylvania, and he uh, he was a weightlifter. He could pump a lot of weight, couldn't he?
So I met him. I had a good friend who also went to Archbishop Rummel. He played football for LSU, Greg Raymond, and Greg was friends with him. They were on the football team together, and so through that friendship, I met him. To this day, I remember just how big he was, and he was.
Mean streak
I
too.
mean, just a great player and worked hard. He really, really worked hard.
Yeah, and his brother ended up winning the silver medal in the Olympics, Joey.
Uh,
So quite a family, and they came from Allentown, PA to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. But that competitive zeal has to help you in what you do now.
Well, absolutely. But I'll say this, and I think it's any business, and you notice too, Jim. I mean, it's all about the people around you. You hire great people, get out their way, and let them do what they do best, and that's been a great recipe for us. And you know, as we've grown the bank over the years, it's sort of been interesting. We've had people have come and have gone, and it's all been a process. And when we started the bank, I was at A, and I wanted to be at D, but I had to go through B and C, and I still find that to this day. And You talked about rising interest rates. I mean, we went through a lot of things. I mean, you had COVID. You no sooner come through COVID than you have, the rising interest rates that we had to deal with, and
Inflation, all that stuff.
everything. It's
Yeah.
just all of it.
And you just made a big acquisition in Texas.
We are so excited about Texas. We this acquisition was $1.5 billion an asset company. It 7 locations. Now 36% of our assets are in Texas. So I like the diversity of that. And by the way, we're in Alabama too. We like Alabama also. But, the diversity of it's been really good. And it's every once in a while you get these transactions that are just great for everyone. So it was great for the bank that we're merging with, and great for Investar. I mean, our stock really, moved on the news, and so we're real excited about it.
We'll spend a few more minutes with John D'Angelo, then Liam Combs from WAFB. He's back from Texas, and we'll talk in 89.3 seconds. This is Jim Engster. Thank you for joining us for Talk Louisiana. Robin Dow producing, and your number's 877-217-5757. In just a moment or two, we'll hear from Liam Combs, fine reporter from WAFB. He's been there just under a year, and he is really doing well covering the Capitol, and he's back from Texas. He saw firsthand the tragedy in Kerrville, Texas. But John D'Angelo is with us. He's the president, founder of Investar Bank, where we originate our show every day from the Investar Tower. And next year will be 20 years. And you have rung the bell once on Wall Street, and I suspect you'll probably be going back for your 20th. I think it was the 10th anniversary when you did it.
Yes. When we took the bank public, that's when we did it the first time. So that was about 10 years ago.
10
correct.
years ago.
Yep.
How was that going?
One of the
an
experience.
IPO, yeah.
Oh, the experience. Well, the IPO experience in itself. I mean, so we went to New York, and for 2 weeks we met with investor after investor. Then they took us to Chicago, and we went to Boston, and it was a whirlwind tour. It was very tiring, but just a wonderful opportunity to see and feel something like that was great. And then ringing the bell, and they put your picture on the building across the street and in Times Square. I mean, it's just an incredible thing.
877-217-5757. I think you got a call from Patricia in Magnolia Woods. John, good morning, Patricia. You're on with John D'Angelo. Hi, Patricia.
Hey, good morning, and congrats on your success. I was wondering what you thought about Bitcoin, which, you hear about the drug dealers use it, but now it seems like people want to mainstream it more. What's your thoughts about that? Thanks.
Well, yeah, I think it's a good investment vehicle. I will tell you, I have a little brokerage account for my son, and a number of years ago, I purchased a tracking stock, so it's GBTC, and it tracks Bitcoin. It was a way for me to sort of get into it and my son into it, and it's up about 850% since we bought it. We didn't bet the farm on it, by the way.
Well, that's 8.5 times what you bought it for.
Exactly, and
Jeez.
My only regret is I didn't buy more of it, but I didn't know. I was just experimenting, trying to learn about what it was all about. So my daughter's unhappy with me, though. So I have 3 daughters and a son, and I only bought it for him. I didn't buy it in their accounts, and his accounts just really passing their accounts up, and so they're upset with me about that.
Well, John D'Angelo is a big LSU guy, as is Jim Nickel, our dear friend, a former board chair at WRKF. But both of you have sent your kids, 3 of them, I believe, in each case to the University of Alabama. Now, what's going on, John D'Angelo?
So, I'm LSU through and through, and so, it's sort of a house divided kind of thing. But what happened was our oldest, during COVID, she wanted to go tour Alabama. And I don't know if you realize this or not, Jim, but Dr. Stuart Bell was the provost here at LSU for a number of years, and he's president over there. So when we went to do the tour, we had the opportunity to visit with him, and he sealed the deal with Sophia. And so once she went there, he adopted us. He literally adopted our family. They invited us to football games. They included us in a lot of things. And so when Chloe had her opportunity, she met with him and made the same decision. And Macy also met with him and made the same decision. So, and he just treated our family so well. He's retiring, by the way. He just retired. Yeah.
Well, and King Alexander, who, of course, had he had a good tenure at LSU that was marred by scandal at the end, and he was just on the air last week talking about that. And I think in many ways he was a fall guy, but nonetheless, he made him radioactive in academia. But Stuart Bell got him back going. Now he's teaching at Oxford in London.
Is that right?
So yeah. But and of course he was Stuart Bell's boss at LSU. And the financial guy who some of the board members didn't like under King Alexander at LSU is now the financial guy at the University of Alabama.
Is that
So,
right?
yeah,
I didn't realize
that's
that.
exactly right. Yeah. Now, Chloe, your daughter, one of your daughters, is here in studio. It's a family affair, isn't it? Even though she defected to Alabama, she's here for the summer at Investar Bank.
Yes, well, she's interning. We have an intern program. We're bringing about 10 interns a year during the summer at the bank, and we've had people from Alabama, LSU, Southeastern, TCU, University of Miami. We had one last year, so we bring them in from all over the place, and give them an opportunity to work at the bank and experience all the various departments that we have at the bank. And we had our first one. We've done this for about 4 years now, and our first one, John Malera, and you may recognize that last name, but he just came back to work with us full time.
Julio?
And Julio's
kid?
son,
Julio's kid?
one of the twins, yeah.
That is interesting, and as mentioned, our show originates from the Investar Tower, and there have been times when people have advised me, Jim, buy your own building. I said, well, I've got a good landlord, but sometimes it's not good to get in the real estate business when that's not your first passion or your first priority. But you've done a great job with an old building that needed some TLC. But I would imagine there were people who said, don't do it, John.
Yes, everybody talks a lot about leasing and doing that, but what had happened was we needed more space. We were growing so much that we needed more space, and we had the opportunity to buy the third floor. And the wonderful thing about this building was it was condoed, so each floor was its own condo, more or less. So we were able to buy the third floor, and we renovated it. And then shortly after we did that, the city decided that they were going to move out and asked if we wanted to buy. They went through all their bidding process, but we went through the bidding process and we were able to get the second floor here. And then there were the investors that had this first floor, and they called and said, hey, John, do you want the whole building? And we said, absolutely. So we were able to do it. But we always had in mind that we were going to leave our tenants here on the first floor because we have great tenants like you, and we appreciate that.
Well, thank you for inspiring us with your career, and it's good when a Louisiana company does well, and Investar is now almost 20 years and killing it, and now venturing into how many states now?
3 states.
And perhaps more, I would think. Perhaps.
Possibly.
Perhaps. Thank you, John.
Yes.
Take